before this video begins, two things. One of them, it might be hideously out of focus the whole time. I'm incredibly tired, as I will explain, and the lighting conditions are pretty bad in here, but please just bear with me on that. And three things really. We're trying to get to 10k. I don't think it will have happened by now since this was recorded in the past, but if you do happen to like the content, please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out to get us to that goal. And 3, if you do have any questions about Behemoth, I'll be answering in an upcoming video. Leave them down below. I'll do a little FAQ where we get some questions and answers going. If you have any burning questions after the video is done, I will answer all of your guys' questions to the best of my ability from my playtime in the game and my Q&A with the devs, and we'll make a whole video about what you want to know about the game, because I can talk about my experiences, as I will in this entire video, but there are specific things that you might be interested in knowing about the game that I simply am too silly to cover. So let me know in the comments below. Anyway, let's get on with the thing you've all been waiting so long for. Right. Apologies, I'm going to be looking at my phone a lot in this video because there's a lot to talk about, like a lot. This is Behemoth, right? We've all been waiting for it. Today is the day I finally got to play it. I've traveled down to London and back in one day, which was many hours. So I'm very tired. I apologize for the absolute word salad that you're about to hear being thrown into your ears. Buckle up because this is going to be a long one. I have a lot of thoughts. Almost all of them are entirely positive. Now, of course, this isn't going to be a full review. I've only played about half an hour of the game, and I'll talk you through that half an hour, and then we'll get into some very specific things that I liked about this demo and this game. And I'm going to be looking at my phone. I've got a lot of notes here. I had my half an hour play session, and then I had an interview with one of the lead developers who was there, and got a bunch of insight on processes and things about the game, and stuff like that I'm really excited to talk about. So before we do all that though, I've just got to say thank you to Skydance for bringing me down there. It's going to be a long time between when I'm recording now and when the embargo lifts. It should be, I think, June 4th is when this goes live. It's currently May 15th, basically. And yeah, this is the day that I've played the game. And I was contemplating coming home, sleeping it off, and talking about it tomorrow, which might have led to a couple of clearer thoughts, but I wouldn't be as passionate about what I want to talk about. I think if I settled down a bit. So I just thought I'd throw my thoughts at you because I've got them all written down. I'm going to miss a few things. Other reviewers will probably pick out a few things that I won't pick up on. We all experienced the same demo though, and it's just because my brain is frazzled right now. But let's get into the details. So my half an hour of playtime, what did it actually consist of? Well, it consisted of a lot of combat, some exploration and puzzle solving, but nothing too hard. And luckily I had the lead dev there talking in my ear, just kind of guiding me through it all, which was very appreciated because there are some puzzles in this game and I'm incredibly dumb. Now, Behemoth takes place, at least the segment that I played in. There are some other environments, which I'll get onto in a bit, but the segment that I played in the game was the mountainous segment that you saw in the reveal trailer. Now, I think by now some more content would have come out about the game in terms of Skydance themselves, showing off some more trailer stuff. I'm not sure what, I haven't seen those. I don't know what's going to be in those. It's only May 15th, as I've just said. So I have no idea what's going to be in those, but from what I saw and what I know, this gameplay that I played was identical pretty much. If you can translate it from that CGI trailer to VR, literally identical in terms of how I expected it to look, to feel, to sound, how the game played. And my 30-minute demo took me through a starting area where I could explore a little bit, take in the sights, then a bit of combat against smaller human enemies, a sighting of one of the Behemoths, a couple more fights with human enemies, and then a fight with a human boss. After that, traversing down, and then a fight with the Behemoth finally, which is the main draw of the game. And I spoke a lot with one of the devs afterwards about inspirations, and one of them is very clearly Shadow of the Colossus and Dark Souls, that sort of thing, because it really comes through in the Behemoth fights. But we'll get there. So in terms of what I played through, it's what's known as a vertical slice in the game world. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically a bunch of different points taken from the game, or a singular point taken from the game, lifted out the main build, and then polished up to be looked at. I was warned there might be a couple bugs and stuff. I didn't really run into any that kind of made me think it was jarring or anything. The game was incredibly polished for what I experienced, and really good. It's sort of overwhelming the amount of stuff I want to talk about, so we're gonna head in chronological order of what I experienced in the game and then dive into some specifics about things you might want to know about. So apologies if the format of this video is a little all over the place, but treat it like a bit of a podcast, maybe boot up Gran Turismo in the background, do a couple of races while I'm speaking, because all you're going to really see is the B-roll from Skydance. Although I did play half an hour, I didn't have, the facilities to bring all my capture gear down, so I couldn't really capture anything. But you will see the gameplay from them that they provided. So let's get into it. So the starting of my session was basically being introduced to the world. Now, fidelity-wise was the main thing that hit me. This game looks as clear, if not clearer, than Saints and Sinners Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 on PSVR2. Now, that's a high bar to clear, but they have cleared it, and you can kind of notice, as you would with any big-scale game, a little bit more aliasing on far objects because of the scale of Behemoth. In Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, everything looks completely clean and smooth. That's because the game is small scale, the objects aren't really that far away from you, but that's not to say there's loads of aliasing here. It's just if you do notice any at all, it'll be because the scale of the stuff you're seeing is so big. Visually in the headset, it is clear, and it runs at a native 90 Hz, which is just absolute music to my ears, and they're targeting that on all platforms, not just on PSVR2. My demo was on PSVR2, but they're targeting a native frame rate on all platforms, Quest 2, Quest 3, PSVR2, the entire lot, which is just awesome. It's one of the main points they were talking about when making the game feel smooth. So it's very fantasy based in terms of, it feels like Dark Souls meets Shadow of the Colossus a little bit. So I'm traversing through this valley with this mountain path, and there's these huge peaks around me, loads of trees and rocks and boulders, and everything looks stylized in the Skydance way, like you would expect from the CGI trailer, but really clear and good. So blown away, my first impression. There are some collectibles that you can see as you go through, both including little statues you can pick up, which give you lore about the world in the final build, and also picking up herbs, which can be used to craft. Now, there isn't, I don't think, a backpack system like Saints and Sinners here. They've kind of simplified it. This isn't a survival game like Saints and Sinners. They made it very clear this is an action game and an adventure, and something huge in scale and kind of terrifying and awesome. So in terms of what you're seeing, and there's a lot of combat, and the combat is very good, but we'll get there. So, traversing through this environment, I came across my first enemy after being introduced to some of the mechanics. There are a lot of cool mechanics in this, but combat itself, it's very similar feeling to Saints and Sinners. You swing your sword, it's got weight to it, your whole body has weight to it when you climb as well, which is great, and climbing has been refined a lot more here than it is in Saints and Sinners. But the combat, in terms of fighting, it's got that very punchy feeling that Saints and Sinners had, where your sword sticks into somebody and you have to yank it out of them. You can dismember them, bring them to the floor. I'm dying, so I need a drink. That's better. Okay. But yeah, there's a lot here in terms of combat and it feeling good. There's a lot of tools at your disposal. You can pick up enemy weapons and use them, or I had access to a hero weapon, as they called it in this demo, which we'll get into in a bit as I talk about that a little bit more. But weapon variety is there. You can use your shield to block, and your shield splinter and crack as enemies hit them, which is really cool, especially in boss fights. But yeah, I had my first enemy encounter, took him down. There's parrying. There's either your straight parry, where you hold your blade kind of perpendicular to where they're coming at you, and you'll parry that and you'll be able to hit back, or you can fully swipe and parry and hit their sword away and then put them into a stun lock phase where you can hit the enemy. And I was playing on quite an easy journalist difficulty. Basically, they wanted us to have quite a smooth experience, but the combat, after speaking to the dev afterwards, seems like it really varies. You can make this really punishing for you, especially in the Behemoth battles, where you can get one hit and you're back to the start of those battles. So it's accessible, but it's also as hard as you want it to be in terms of what you want to make it. So I had a couple fights, did a couple puzzles, and this is when I was first introduced to the grapple hook, which you saw in the CGI trailer, and I'm assuming in the gameplay trailer. Now, from that CGI trailer, I thought, okay, cool, we've got a grapple hook. You can see it pull down a tree, and the main character grabs the rope, pulls down the tree, and kills an enemy with it. I thought, okay, it'll be a combat tool. Sick. Wrong. There was a moment in my gameplay where I was told to climb up a rope, and I tried to do so. The rope fell through, and I had to use the grapple hook to grab onto the part of the ledge where the rope was used to be attached to, and you use the grapple to pull yourself up. So you can kind of Spider-Man around a little bit. It doesn't feel weightless, it feels grounded still, but it's a really versatile tool, and you can use that in combat as well, to pull enemies towards you or to pull their weapons towards you, which is just really sick. I think that's fine. Apologies, this entire video may be out of focus. I'm incredibly tired, and the lighting here is not good, so I apologize if you're currently seeing a really great and in focus wall and not in focus me at all. I'm going to try and back up to alleviate that. That is my bad. Right, where were we? Right, yeah, the grappling hook. So you can use this to, you know, pull an enemy's weapon towards you and then grab it and use it to fight, or you can use it to pull an enemy themselves. There's a mode in this game, a kind of a power-up that you can use to have kind of super strength. So you can use this to break through walls or to damage enemies, and you can also use it to pull enemies towards you with the rope, because not only does it act like your standard grappling hook, like in Dead Hook VR, for example, you can attach it to something and swing. You can attach it to an object and then grab the rope with your other hand and use it to pull towards you, which you use in puzzle solving quite a lot in this game, which is just such a unique mechanic that I absolutely loved all the way through, was getting that rope and yanking it to do actions. And that's one thing that the Saints and Sinners series does really well, is those physics-based interactions that feel like they have weight, and it's the same here in Behemoth. Feels really, really good. After playing around with that a little bit, I had a fight with a couple more enemies, some archers, which introduced my use of my shield, which I failed to block a lot of shots. But I did find that I killed one of the archers on the ground, and I could just pick up his bow, pick up his quiver, and just shoot one of the archers up above. And the arrows and the bows felt, that was a weird way of phrasing that, the bows and arrows felt really accurate and good, just how you expect them and hope them to be in VR. So they've put a load of polish over all the weapons here, and there are quite a vast amount of weapons, which is awesome to see. Axes, swords, small axes and hatchets and knives and all sorts of things, and you can actually customize these swords cosmetically as well, which is just another level beyond, which I didn't realize they'd do, but apparently in the full game you can. I'm also just going to pause here to say that I missed out this piece of information as I was recording, but there is actually an arena that you can go into, and I was introduced to this kind of through after my demo. I was put in the arena, and you can hit a big gong and it'll start endless ways for you to fight enemies, and all your weapons will be there. So there's a little space to practice with these weapons and fight as many enemies as you feasibly can. So on PSVR2 especially, if you're missing out on that kind of like horde mode feeling that say Blade and Sorcery has, this is probably quite a good equivalent to that through Behemoth. So after a couple of these battles, there was a bit more traversal and climbing. And the climbing, again, as I said, feels good, feels weighty, pulling myself up and around. And there are some monkey bar type sections where I'm swinging between like arrows that have been stuck in a wall, and you're climbing across a crevasse. And you get a view of this big glacier, and it looks absolutely breathtaking. Honestly, like not realistic Horizon Call the Mountain level stuff, because it's not that realistic of a game. Visually, art style wise, but in terms of fidelity and the amount of effort the environmental artists have put into, one of the big things they wanted to do was scale, and they absolutely killed it here, because the environments themselves are the best example of that. They're absolutely nuts. Now, I then came across the first human boss in the game. It has a really cool intro cutscene with some dialogue where, you know, you focus on them taunting you or whatever, and then you get into a fight. They have their own heavy attack patterns. You have to parry, you have to block, you have to use your medicine pouches as well from your crafting earlier. Everything here feels like a Dark Souls encounter. The polish, the animation teams have done such a good job of how the models move and interact, and I had a blast fighting through that. So yeah, human enemy bosses are here as well as the, you know, big behemoths that you have in the rest of the battles. Okay, now finally, let me stop teasing you with the rest of it. The behemoths themselves. Now, we'll get onto how many might be in the game, because I didn't get a definitive answer, and a few more details in a bit once I get onto my comprehensive list of things that I wrote down during my play session. So many things, a few things. But yeah, the behemoth battle itself, I don't want to completely just spoil how this one goes down, but generically speaking, you go into this massive open space, and Shadow of the Colossus happens, basically. I laughed and said to the dev as it started, I can see the Shadow of the Colossus influence here. And he said, yeah, because you find this like slumbering behemoth, and you've seen it earlier in the level. You get a glimpse of it, and it knocks out some enemies as a big weapon, essentially, and uses it, smashes some enemies down, and it sends you flying backwards as a player in the game. It's really cool. And you think, man, that is a gigantic enemy. How am I ever going to fight that? And you come into this massive basin in the ice, and you see a mountain on the other side. And as soon as you start walking forward, this thing starts to wake up, and you realize it's not a mountain, it's the enemy you saw earlier. And this huge behemoth, colossi-like creature rises up and starts basically attacking you. And it is absolutely terrifying when it swings its weapon and it goes flying past you and lands. The haptics are going off, and I was told in my play session that these haptics that I experienced were only 30% of kind of the strength they wanted them to be at during these battles. They want you to feel under pressure, feel like you're being attacked, and I think that's really, really cool, because they're utilizing the PSVR2 features. So yeah, the battle kicks off and it goes down in a very Shadow of the Colossus style way, where you have to attack weak points, say on the legs, that'll bring it down, and then you can grab on to the behemoth and climb up and then stab it further and attack different parts of the creature, and each one will bring it down further and further until you can finally finish it off with a finishing move that I won't spoil because it's a very, very cool sequence, and I think this section in the game is how it's going to play out in the actual game. Just not as short. I played about 30 minutes of the game, but the section that I played through is elongated to about 2.5 hours, I was told, in the full game. So yeah, this final climactic fight, you could feel the tension building as you got to it, and it does not disappoint. Honestly, exactly what I pictured these fights to be like on the Behemoths, the Shadow of the Colossus style fights that I've always wanted in VR. It's here, it's this. And to be honest, I really hope that the YouTuber Jacksepticeye gets his hands on this game, because he's been asking for a Colossus style VR game for ages, and this is it. If you've imagined that and wanted that, the fights that you get in here are they're like the spitting image of the Shadow of the Colossus ones. They've got their own spins to them. For example, instead of just fighting the behemoth here, the behemoth between stages, say it drops to its knees and you've got to find another point to climb up. So you've got to run around to the arm and you've got to climb the arm to stab it in the head or whatever. Towards your journey of getting to the arm and walking around it, because it's that huge, you will find a couple of human enemies that you'll then have to parry and stab and cut your way through. So there is a breakup in pace, and it feels quite natural. It doesn't feel like it's trying to rip off Shadow of the Colossus. It's a clear inspiration, and it does its own thing, which is really appreciated. But that was the ending of my session, was the fight with the behemoth, the climactic battle, and absolutely blown away with how massive these things are in scale. And this isn't even the one I fought in the kind of vertical slice that I played. Apparently isn't even the biggest one in the game. The biggest one in the game, they said, was about the size of a skyscraper, which is exciting and terrifying, to say the least. So that was my playthrough experience. There's a couple more details in there I probably missed out, due to my just excitement of playing the game and getting our hands on for the first time. But those are the things that stand out the most. But yeah, let's go on to some of the more specific things. But overall, from that demo, I was left with such a smile on my face. This was the VR game that I wanted for so long. It's honestly just, they've gone above and beyond. Skydance have absolutely killed it. And from all the people saying that the CGI trailer was just going to be that, it's just going to be a trailer. The game's not going to look like that. It looks like that. It plays like that. Whatever you're imagining, to an extent, let's not, think, yeah, I'm completely out there. But if you're looking at the trailer and thinking, I really hope the game is like this, they've got it. They've killed it. There's a reason I was smiling so hard in the photo that I posted when I went down to play it, and it's because the game is fucking phenomenal, for lack of a better word. But anyway, we're about 20 minutes into this recording here, so we're going to jump in and talk about some specific questions that I answered pertaining to us PSVR2 players and just people in general. So, first question I asked was obviously frame rate, reprojection. It's 90 on PSVR2, no reprojection whatsoever. Native 90, which is awesome, and they made sure that it's running this smooth frame rate so nobody feels kind of motion sick from it, because if a game is stuttering, it pulls you out of it, and they want to make sure that frame rate is constant the whole time. Throughout my play session, it was, so I'm hoping in the full build it is as well. I asked about enemy variety as well. There are hundreds of enemies that you'll fight against in the game. Not individual enemy types, but enemy-wise and battles. And the entire game is full of this action. So there are these Dark Souls-like bosses, and there are also the baseline enemies. There are different enemy factions throughout the game that you'll be fighting, which is really cool. And there are all unique visuals and attack animations for the enemy bosses that you'll fight to make them feel different. And one of the big points about enemy design and combat in particular, which we talked about, was that these devs, they know their stuff. I saw a post today, actually, and this will be a while ago because embargo dates and things for you now, but I saw a post saying that a VR dev was very worryingly in a studio that very clearly did not care about VR. They just wanted to make a game, and they happened to put it in VR, and they didn't really understand the medium. They don't play VR games. Not the case here, evidently. They knew their stuff. When talking to the devs here, they referenced how they loved Blade and Sorcery, so they brought some great kind of features and mechanics from Blade and Sorcery into this and put their own spin on them. And talking about different games that really utilize different methods to make you feel immersed, which is really, really appreciated. Now the campaign as well, I asked about campaign length and difficulty. The campaign is around 12 hours long, they have confirmed, so a full proper campaign, just as much as any flat screen game, which is awesome, full of action, full of puzzles, and a wide linear approach. So there are a couple paths you can take, but they're all going to lead you to the same place, essentially. A lot of bosses, like human bosses, Not loads and loads of behemoths. There are only a couple throughout the game, I think they emphasized here. But the behemoths are big spectacles, and the battles do last a while, so you're not going to be disappointed. And the difficulty, as I discussed earlier, is very Dark Souls-like if you want it to be, or you can make it, you know, feel more like a powerhouse if you want to turn the difficulty down. Haptics-wise, I asked about Haptics 2. Again, they've been utilized fully here. The only thing that wasn't in my build was adaptive triggers and haptic triggers. They weren't implemented in the game, and they were definitely thinking about it for further passes. So haptics are all there apart from adaptive triggers in my build, but rest assured they should be there in the full build. But yeah, haptics wise, expect everything to be used on the PSVR2, which is just thumbs up, amazing. I did also cheekily ask about DLC, or the fact that this could be a franchise. I got no response, as you would expect. Well, not no response, I didn't sit there in silence, but they couldn't say anything about that. But if this game does well, we could probably see some DLC or a sequel happen. And this is a promising VR game. Very, very promising. So hopefully it does well and we get more like it. Accessibility wise, if you guys are worrying about accessibility and feeling motion sick, I had a chat with them about that. There are all the options for snap turning, different degrees of snap turning, different vignetting, different smooth turning rates. Basically stuff like that, which is all there to alleviate motion sickness. And again, running on native hurts, so you're not going to feel sick from reprojection. Awesome. And they also made a point to talk about how you could take on the behemoths and not feel motion sick. Because of the scale of the behemoths, when you're strapped on and grabbed onto the side of them, your peripheral is full of this lumbering creature, so you're not seeing a lot of the outside world. You're seeing movement, so you can tell you're being thrown around, but they've done it in a way where it doesn't make you feel motion sick, which is really, really appreciated and really, really cool. Right, last couple things. In terms of places in the game, I'm not sure if further trailers have shown any of this, but they did talk to me about how the fact that this game doesn't just take place in like the mountains that you see in the first trailer and in the footage that I played, but it also takes place in caverns and in swamps and in different environments, which I didn't expect. I expected it just to be locked to this mountain area, which is awesome. So there's a variety in where you're going to go. Grappling hook, they talked about the amount of work gone into that, making it feel like something tangible and not just a gimmick. None of the mechanics, they emphasize, none of the mechanics in this game are gimmicks. They're all there to be used for a reason, and they're all going to be used constantly throughout the game. There's nothing here that's just a one-off and just a VR gimmick. It's all really ingrained in here, which is awesome. Now, I said I'd touch on hero weapons, and I asked them about that as well. Basically, hero weapons are special weapons, and the one I had in my demo was a hero sword that I could throw at an enemy and then call back to me, a bit like a Mjolnir for, like, you know, Thor's hammer. So that was really, really cool, and I had a chat with them about hero weapons where they said when you defeat a behemoth, you'll get a general perks boost and combat boost to your character, but you'll also get a perk and combat boost for a hero weapon as well. So you can choose to level them up, you can attach different skins to them, cosmetics, make them look the way you want them to look, and there are a lot of hero weapons to choose from, which is another big thumbs up from me. A big thing they hit on as well in our Q&A was this was made for VR. It was a labor of love by the team. This is a big, big combination of talent and effort, and it shows this is pushing the boundary for VR, and that's not something I get to say very often on a big scale like this, but this is pushing the boundary 100%, which is incredible. And I mean, I've gone in this in a very roundabout way, so we've ended up with the last statement being that the world doesn't feel static. That's the final thing we kind of talked about, was that the world feels alive. For example, when I came across the first enemy, he wasn't just standing there waiting for me, he was there just kind of sitting down by a campfire warming his hands, and then he noticed me, got up, drew a sword, and then we had our fight. So the world feels alive, it feels lived in. When you're traversing through it, you feel like you're part of it rather than everything's there waiting for you. It's not a narrow little passage that you're going through and everything's set up for you. It doesn't feel like that. It feels real from the vertical slice that I played anyway. But yeah, I'm absolutely just blown away by Behemoth. My voice is dying, so we're going to call it a day there. This video has been long enough already, but if you do have any questions about Behemoth that I can answer from my gameplay, please leave them down below. As I said at the start of the video, I will answer them as best as I can in a future video, so leave them in the comments below, please. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting me. The reason I got to go and play this game and test it out for you guys is because of you. It's because of you guys, which is fucking crazy. But yeah, thank you all once again. Thank you to our patrons, Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Hazit Mirza, Ace Gamer, Hippie Pickle, and Jin007, a License to Chill, our YouTube member. I apologize if I missed any new members that might have joined since then. If I have, I'll put their names here, because I don't know if anyone's going to join between now and embargo lift, because I'm recording this on the 15th. But yeah, overwhelmingly positive, just gushing about the game. basically nothing bad to say about it. Skydance, you're a bunch of wizards, you really are, and you're going to pull off something really special with this game. So, yeah, thank you all for watching, and please, again, let me know any questions you have, and I'll see you all in the next one.